conversation with my pole instructor recently about style expression and how in like a showcase or certain training environments, you can often see waves of trends, of methodologies, or like how people are moving, and even how people teach or how they present themselves physically. It sort of reminded me of the same thing that I've seen happen in strength and conditioning, in weightlifting, and in any performance space, really. So you sort of notice these patterns, right? A kind of copy and paste effect where we're all inspired by another image, where everyone starts looking a little like everyone else or talking a little like everyone else, as if we're trying to become an image of a person we've seen or like a version that we think we should be. And I kept coming back to the question, where in all that do we ask, how do I actually embody myself? Where am I in this movement? And who am I in this expression? That conversation made me think about the early days of my weightlifting career, because just like in pole, there's this clear foundation rooted in sort of biomechanics and strength, a base layer of form and structure that helps you learn where your body is in time and space and what your limits are, and in motion and coordination and with everything else. And you need that. You need internal cueing, that foundational awareness, because it is the map. But once the map is learned, then what? Where do we go? And that's where things get interesting. That is where you create the environment for exploration and play, for students or athletes to try, to experiment, to fall or fail in ways that actually produce growth, or innovation. And that kind of failure isn't really failure at all. It's how we begin to find what works for this body, for your body, what suits your structures, your rhythm, your nervous system, and how you respond to stress. In the pole world, we were talking about this in the context of stylistic flair, like expressions in someone's dance, something that I'm still learning about. But in my world, in the strength training world, I've seen the same thing over and over, especially in Olympic lifting. Yes, there are outcome goals, there are technique goals, there are competition standards. But if you watch lifters from different countries, you'll start to see variations, small stylistic cues that are embedded into their technique. Some people will change their grip between the clean and the jerk. Some people will use a dynamic start in the snatch or the clean as opposed to a static start. And what always fascinated me was when people started to make those changes, not just because of tradition or mimicry, but because they were starting to find their version of the lift. So I would always ask, okay, so what feels good for you? Even in something as structured as weightlifting, there is space to express. There is space to explore. Once you've built that foundation, you are allowed to, expected to, make it your own. And this doesn't just show up in the way we move. You can see it in how people coach, how people market themselves, how people speak online. Like, mimicry or making something in someone else's image becomes clear, especially when someone is still finding their voice, their values, they're still building confidence and trust in their own methods. It is understandable. We all start somewhere and we all draw influence. We try things on, but eventually you have to come back to yourself, because your style, your way of creating, of teaching, of moving, those are the things that make your work resonate the most. They are what makes you real. So in a roundabout way, this whole conversation became a reflection on structure and what we do with it. How even when you're working inside a binary, a sport, a system, a set of rules, you still have the ability to make it yours. You still have the responsibility, I think, to stay curious enough to ask, what is my way of doing this? The dance class I took that night was full of like stillness, of softness, of slowness, of patience. And it asked what feels safe in your body. It wasn't about copying a shape. It was about inhabiting one. And that felt deeply aligned with everything I've been learning and unlearning across my own career and my experience in my own body and what strength means to me. Because sometimes it is the presence of structure, not the absence of it, that gives us the clearest opportunity to explore. And in doing so, to embody who we really are. So I guess this is just me thinking out loud, but if you've ever felt boxed in by the rigidity of a method as a mover, as a coach, as a teacher, I would love to know, what helped you find your way back to yourself? Thank you for listening. Love yous.